So designing a course for learning. So we've already discussed, as I said last time, the goal of teaching by teachers is to ensure learning by students. And we know that learning is the change that happens in students' knowledge. And it is of two types, about concepts and understanding, or about capabilities or skills of doing so. And we've also seen the students, for declarative knowledge, we need to help them develop a richer knowledge base and interconnections between them. And for developing skills, we need to ensure that they are familiar with the component skills and that they can practice integration. So now let's come to teaching. So we understand this, now we are assigned a course to teach. So typically course teaching starts with the syllabus, right? We all know that, what are we going to teach? So we list down the syllabus, then we design our lectures to deliver the topics in the syllabus, and then we give an exam to assess. So effective teaching has to start with properly defining the syllabus and having appropriate techniques for teaching and assessment. Okay. In this session, we will focus on defining the course syllabus properly and plan for teaching. And we will also discuss Bloom's taxonomy, which is one of the most influential frameworks in the field of education. So what's a common approach to course design? I mean, you would have seen it in your institution, no doubt about it. What we do is list of topics approach, which is the most common one, where a set of faculty members debate and discuss what is the list of topics to be considered in a course. Essentially, what is important. So we say this should be covered, X should be covered, Y should be covered, we include it. And we select, then from the list, we select most important topics that can be covered in a semester, 14, 15 weeks. And then we go ahead and prepare lectures and deliver them as per the list of topics. When we design tests based on the list of topics. And so this design is easy and it is very qualitative, it gives the entire control to teachers, but there's a problem. This is entirely teaching focused. In fact, it's lecturing focused. So what are we saying? Let's give them lectures on these topics. These topics are important. We will give them lectures on these topics. So topics are important is something that teacher decides, or a set of teachers decide, again teacher's perspective. And that we will lecture, that's again a teaching focused thing. So it is better, instead of this list of topics which is decided by the teacher and then lecturing focus, it is better to have an integrated design where the course design, lecturing and other activities, and assessment support each other towards better learning of students. So what are the main elements of what I'm calling integrated course design? First is you establish learning outcomes of the course. Sometimes they call learning goals of the course. Once these are established, then you identify the topics to be covered, and those topics, only those that need to be covered to deliver the learning outcomes. So it is nothing about what is important or not. What are the learning outcomes? Then you cover those topics that need to be covered in order that the student can achieve the learning outcomes. Then you plan your teaching and learning activities, and they are not just lectures. So inside the class, lectures, and as we will see, some activities within the lecture. So inside the class, what are your teaching activities? And outside the class, what are the teaching learning activities you're giving? Is there a project, assignment, etc., etc.? And then you have to plan the assessment and feedback. So you have to assess this learning and you have to give feedback on the learning. These three are related. And in integrated course design, all three should support each other. As we'll see in a moment, if they don't support each other, it's your learning, the result will be not very good learning, which is not, of course, desirable. So the integrated course design is essentially learning outcomes is the centerpiece around which your teaching revolves and around which your assessment revolves. But of course, teaching and assessment are also related to each other. So let's just first just discuss the relationship between these, and then we'll discuss as we go along. We'll discuss today itself. We will discuss establishing the learning outcomes. We will discuss teaching. We will also discuss assessment. So let's first discuss learning outcomes and teaching. Why must they be supportive of each other? So teaching must be consistent with learning outcomes. Okay? The teaching activities must lead to achievement of learning outcomes by the students. If they're not consistent, learning will suffer. So let's give some example. Suppose there's a learning outcome in a course that student will be able to design and build a small electronic system from components. But in the lectures that we give, we have lectures on components, but there's no lecture on design integration. We have small labs with different components, but there's no lab for system building. So clearly, this teaching will not deliver that outcome. Let's take another example. Students will be able to critically evaluate a given system. So this is one of the learning outcomes, suppose, in the course. And now we give a lecture which covers the procedure for evaluation. How do you evaluate? But we don't do no example in the class, and we give no analysis, assignment, or exam question to the student. Clearly, that learning outcome will not be achieved. Okay? So if teaching is not consistent with the learning outcomes will not be met by students. And this is a common violation. Actually, many places would have good goals established by they'll get some expert faculty from different places, establish some good goals, but the motivation to deliver those goals through teaching and learning activities is often not there. So the teaching just is not commensurate for delivering the learning outcomes. Now let's look at between learning outcomes and assessment. So assessment also has to be aligned to learning outcomes. The students will finally align their learning to their assessment. We can claim whatever we want, the students should learn for learning's sake, etc., etc. But the fact of the matter is, students inevitably align their learning to the assessment that you're doing. So let's take an example. Suppose in the Intro to Programming course, we have a learning outcome that the student will be able to design, code, test small programs, as well as another learning outcome that the student understands some concept X, Y, Z. And then we have an assessment method, that is, we assign grade to the student largely based on tests, quizzes, mid-sem exam, final exam. In these exams, you can only test concepts. You can at most say, hey, here is a program, what is the output, etc., etc. So this teaching style, this assessment style will not deliver the learning outcome. So first of all, students will work towards the exam, and they will say, okay, exam has to be done well. So they will say, okay, exam will test this kind of questions, which are largely going to be conceptual and theoretical. So they will focus on that. They will focus on their learning on that. Not on able to design, code, test small programs. And suppose a student learns well how to program, that is, spends time and effort able to design, code, and test small programs. Suppose a student does, actually that student will be penalized because she will not be spending much time in the theory aspects of it, and so is likely to be disadvantaged in the exam. So, so student, is not going to really do that. So that is why, for example, in most good institutions, assignments, projects, etc., are always given weight in this in the final grades whenever skills are to be developed, because you can't assess for skills in a theory based exam. And that's why skill based, wherever skill is to be developed, there is a learning outcome that the student will be able to do these things. That's very hard to test in a large exam based system. So what this shows, these examples, small example that I've shared, what this shows is that if your assessment is not consistent with the learning outcome, students are not going to achieve the learning outcomes. They will essentially achieve whatever learning is needed to master the exam. And this is a very common occurrence in our education system. While we may desire to teach them a lot of things, may even try to teach them, actually genuinely teach them, but the exam, it's all exam based, the grade is exam based, we do a midterm final, and if it is a university exam, there is a final. Hey, look, these are largely going to be on the concepts, and that's what therefore students learn doing. And that's one of the reasons why just 20-30% of our engineers have engineering capability. They just learn the concepts and master how the exams to be taken. Teaching and assessment is also important. First of all, there is a fairness question. Then the fairness question is, you cannot assess a student if you've not taught something. Right? The student should be assessed only on what has been taught or discussed in class. So, for example, common challenges that we see, concept and problem solving is taught in the class, but assessment is largely on concepts via exams. So you may give lots of examples in the class, how the problem is to be solved, etc., etc. But if the historical perspective is that the student knows that the exam is only going to be on concepts, the student is not likely to invest on learning the problem solving aspect, even though you were teaching it. So you are teaching, but the student will not learn. You may teach many things in your course, but for various reasons, sometimes for ease of simplicity, you give your exam on small portions of it. Students figure it out. Sooner or later, they figure it out that the exam will only be on these simple concepts which are easy to grade. And then they will learn only those portions. Okay? Let's take another situation where concept and problem solving is taught, but the assessment is largely on problem solving, assignments and projects. So you give projects and you say all the weight, all the grade will be in how well you present your project, and etc., etc. If you do that, the student is not going to spend time going deeper into the concepts. Okay? And of course, you can do many topics are not discussed in class, but exams have questions on them. They are unfair, but in some university systems, I know the teacher will come in the end and say, hey, look, I've not been able to cover all the things, but by the way, well, these are the types of topics on which the exams will come. So he just sort of covers it in that manner. But the learning does not happen. So the point is that a good course has three components. Learning outcomes, which is what the student learns in that course. Teaching activities to help students achieve those learning outcomes. And teaching activities is not just lecturing. It is teaching and learning activities, the assignments you give, the reading assignments you give, the notes you post, etc., etc. Everything, including, of course, lectures that you give. And assessments to support the learning as well as, of course, giving grading. So these three things, these three support each other and they're not independent. That's why, again, some of the systems where teaching is done in one place, where while assessment is being done somewhere else, is not going to lead to good learning. That model is fundamentally flawed. It works well for some types of learning, for very established body of learning where you can make these consistent. But for anything dynamic, that's going to be very hard. And weaknesses in any of these three can lead to lesser learning. We will discuss each one of these in the course. Let's first do a little quiz, and then I will also take the questions that you have. So what I will do is I will take. So this is the quiz, single correct. Please read the quiz and answer it. I'll give you 2 minutes. 2 minutes for this particular quiz. All right. So the correct answer is C, and I have only 2 people who gave the answer on ALT, but both have said C. All right. Let's now look at this second question, and I'll give 1 second for this. So this is multi-correct. So multiple choice. More than one choices may be correct. Okay. So please look at this and again, those who have ALT can reply on ALT, and others can put on chat to whichever ABCD, all the letters you think are apply to this. Okay, so many people have said AC, but some of them have said B and D, B and C, B, C, D, and here also in ALT some have said AD. So let's just quickly look at it. So so it's not appropriate. Clearly, we just discussed that the right way to go about designing the course is first you establish the learning outcomes, and then you identify the list of topics to be discussed. A is a common method used, but that's not a proper approach. Right? So it's not appropriate. B is clearly appropriate. C is includes an LO on ability to critically analyze, and for assessment plan to have, there is no assessment given for doing it. So this is C is not appropriate, because if you have a learning outcome, you must give assessment of that kind. And D is clearly appropriate. What point D makes out is if you give a reading assignment, briefly discuss it in the lecture and guide the students to read, that is also teaching. Lecturing is not the only way of teaching. So this is quite all right. D is quite okay.